Recycle is when you later turns an item that cannot be decomposed later into an items that have other functionality. For example, when you recycle a mineral water bottles into crafts, and we think this will be benefit for three reasons. Firstly, recycle will then make the environment more sustainable. Why? Notice that by doing this recycling, this can then be reduce the amount of non-biodegradable waste in the status quo, which we believe is very significant in the status quo. Secondly, this can then be a form of further responsibility for people who use non-biodegradable item to preserve the environment. And lastly, recycle is the best solution to solve the problem of non-biodegradable problem waste compared to other mechanisms such as burning the waste, etc., which we believe that can then have a worse impact in the nature in the status quo. Panels, we believe that the current status quo is very problematic itself. Why? We believe that in status quo, people's responsibility for the goods they use is very low, right? Let's look at things as simple as, for example, the separating the waste. We believe even in status quo, these people, apart from being unable to recycle independently by themselves, they are also not responsible enough to separating things such as organic and also non-organic waste, which in the end it will be make it more difficult for people who will recycling it, for example. That's why we are proud to propose that we would criminalize individual and organization who don't recycle, with our goal is to make a better sustainability in the status quo. What our mechanism look like? Firstly, we will make a law which will cover all levels of society, in which the punishment that is set is not imprisonment but in the form of penalty such as tilang in Indonesia, and also fines at the corporate level, or even in the more severe level, we will, for example, we will do the revocation of business license that they have. At the individual level, we will implement a centralized waste disposal at the individual level. Then all these individual will be registered, for example, in TPU, for example, like in Indonesia, in each region, where they will no longer able to dispose of their waste in any place without any clear responsibility. But the opposition side of the house cannot say that under our side of the house this cannot be done, whichever because the technology that needed to conduct this data collection, it doesn't exist. We believe that the existing technology is already significant. See how in Indonesia, if you want to buy gas, for example, you have to use the application of My Pertamina, etc. In the organization level, we believe that the mechanism that we will provide is that we will not then ask each organization to recycle independently, but they can recycle via other recycling institution, provided that they remain responsible for all the waste that they produce. Two things that I'm going to prove to you in this debate. Firstly, why it is principally justified to make this penalty, and secondly, how it will be create a better sustainability in the status quo. Firstly, why it is principally justified. Notice in the status quo, awareness at the individual level is very low, right? Look how in the status quo, the characterization of people in the society, which at the individual level, especially in developing countries, where they tend to have a mindset that as long as this can be profitable for me, why not? Even when, for example, it can be troublesome or even harmful for some people, they don't care about it. For example, look at how in Indonesia, many people then throw a garbage, for example, in the roadside, without caring about the impact that this garbage disposal can have on the other people or even the environment itself. Secondly, notice also that the organization in status quo is a profit-oriented company base, which they will be seek as much as profit as possible, even when it is harming the nature. We believe that in the status quo, the individual who are at the organization level, such as many fashion companies, they then create waste from the rest of their production without then giving further responsibility for the remaining fabrics, for example, they have from their production. Notice how is in the fashion industry in status quo, which is the industry with the most harm to the nature, with the rest of the fabrics, for example, they have in their production process, which is then followed by the food industry, which leaves garbage in the form of leftovers of food and also the food wrappers. Also notice that in the status quo, global warming is already at a very high level, right? Look at how right now in the status quo, polar ice is melting at a very significant rate. And also notice how in the status quo, polar ice melt thousands of tons every day because of this human-generated waste. Notice how then the sea level rises a few centimeters every year and then sinks several islands in the coast. Notice in the status quo, victims of global warming are not only the humans, right? But also the nature as a whole. It is inclusive. Look how in the status quo, many marine animals are then entangled by plastic waste, for example, and many various human waste. Look at how, for example, the endangered sperm whale that dies because it eats plastic waste that created by the human, right? Also, not these panels. We believe that law is the best. problem solving for this problem. It functions as a safety net that is most likely to impose the restriction on a wide level. We believe that the state or even global level, the law is proven as the most effective mechanism for making changes. Right? See how the law will make people more organized. Look how the existence of law make people, for example, more rational. For example, they will be more careful when driving, or they will be even, for example, commit crimes that is harm the law, for example, in the status quo. Secondly, why it will be better, we will create a better sustainability in the status quo. Notice, we believe that the recycle mechanism is the most appropriate mechanism in the status quo. Look at how Denmark, after, for example, having a structured recycling mechanism, then become the country with the best hygiene level in the world. Look at how Denmark can then also help many countries in handling changes to the waste problem that exists in the status quo. Look how then Denmark can reduce the pollution, at least in their country, with the recycle mechanism, right? Notice, we believe that the existence of law, or maybe the structural change, will make changes at the more significant level and stronger than the cultural changes that we believe that is exists more in the status quo. And we believe this law then has a strong supremacy more than this cultural change that is, for example, they are growing and also circulating in the society without even any context, right? We believe that the existing legal mechanism in the status quo can then have a significant impact on the society as a whole. Look at how in the status quo, after the law, for example, on women's protection in Indonesia, has made people in Indonesia, for example, they become more aware and also realize how this discrimination in women exists in the society. For example, they live in the patriarchal world, etc. Is a very significant problem in the status quo. Also, notice panel, we believe with the existing law, this will later create actus reus and mens rea. We believe that the actus reus and mens rea can then create more pressure for these people. If, for example, they are not capable to recycling their waste, and we believe that on individual level, even if someone violates this regulation, the etc. We believe that the number is not that significant, right? For example, when in the status quo there are penalties regarding driving safety, will there will be more and more people who are more aware about the safety of driving, and maybe just some insignificant number of people, for example, like the irrational people that can, for example, driving not safety, right? It is safe even when, for example, we fail to raise the awareness individual level. We still have organization that we believe have a greater influence in making changes, such as, for example, they can then have an impact on the environment for better, because they are in the level that is, for example, they are mass production, that even that we believe their ways of production is more significant than the individual level that we believe in the status quo is not as significant, rather than this organization level. That's why we are proud to propose.